We have my fellow podcaster. He is a podcast host and a co-host. He is the founder of Nova Zor Digital, and he is the digital savage himself. Welcome today, Roman. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. I know you're super busy and you have such a hectic schedule with, running a business and having two podcasts. Now, you are a owner of a business, a digital media business, which I think kind of probably helped you get into this digital world of podcasting just a bit. But before you were able to do that, you weren't going to be in digital media. Is that right?
Yeah. So I went to school for criminal justice. I was going to go into the Marine Corps at one point when I was in college. So if you have a bachelor's degree and you want to go into the Marines, you can go to Quantico, and if you're done and finished, you can get a commission as a officer, a second lieutenant. So I thought I was going to do that at one point, but then I got an ulcer caused by a bacteria called H. pylori and almost died. So that didn't go that way. But yeah, I interned with the Secret Service, held a top secret federal clearance the semester before I graduated, and then I graduated. It was winter of 2008 when the basically economy tanked. So state, local, federal agencies froze hiring. For like 10, 11 months, I was looking for a job, applying to anything. At that point, kind of doubting myself, down and depressed. And then, like you said, an opportunity presented itself. I thought I had nothing to lose, and I kind of got into digital marketing and have been doing it for, 13 years at this point. Various agencies, founding my own agency, working and managing teams, working with Fortune 500 clients. So at this point, over 600 accounts or clients, so different industries. But yeah, it has helped me, and podcasting has also helped when I got into podcasting, helping clients in terms of digital marketing, some of the offerings that I think the audio medium is superior in terms of reaching audiences.
I would imagine. Let's just be frank. You're an amazing podcast host, but just to be totally clear, a lot of podcasters don't do as well because they don't take the time to, one, learn about analytics, learn about marketing, learn about, optimizing your name. And we just don't take the time. Is that, would you say that that's accurate, or am I kind of missing the mark there?
People don't necessarily have a background in marketing or digital marketing. So oftentimes they get to, a plateau and then try to figure out, why my show isn't growing. How can I reach new audiences? And obviously having experience with organic and paid social and doing media buys and things of that nature, working with podcast networks, collaborating with other podcasters and everything in between, having a digital marketing background, I think, helps in that component. Obviously, you need good content. Regardless if you promote a show and it's not good, people aren't going to necessarily listen to it. There may be an initial bump, but you're not going to get, reoccurring listeners or subscribers.
Yeah, and what are we doing wrong? Like, I know the content is there. Like you said that's a big issue for some podcasters. What do you see a lot of podcasters doing? Because I could only imagine that you listen to a lot of podcasts. So you've heard of quite a few podcasts before you created the platform you did for podcasters. What are we doing wrong? That it just seems like there's only a few chosen ones that really can make this work.
Yeah, and I think numbers are deceptive. I believe if you get like 100 or 150 downloads of your episode in the first month, you're at like the top 10%, honestly. So people think it's this crazy number, but you also have to think about it. Have you ever been in a room on a stage with 100, 150 people as an audience? That's not, that shabby. So I think people often think, I need 1 million downloads or this, that, or the other. But, you can reach your audience. If you have something in terms of secondary, you can monetize that audience. And there's a lot of people that sell or, upsell or do different things in terms of adding value to their audience that have small niche audiences, but, are making 6-7 figures. So I think it's really also understanding who your audience is and where they spend their time online. and basically packaging your content in a way to connect and convey what you're trying to do with your show. And obviously, hopefully, if they have that interest, they'll turn into listeners and subscribers.
Okay, so when you created your platform, with interview, like, because you are an interview, I would say like an interview platform with the digital savage, because I know you stockpile lots and lots and lots of episodes. How are you able to recruit guests, keep the content energized and new and refreshed? How are you able to do that so well?
Yeah, I think that's by accident. I would encourage everybody to have like a runway of about a month or two, depending what frequency they're releasing. So if it's once a week, maybe have 4 to 8 episodes at all times, because
Okay.
life does happen, things do happen, and you can have those episodes queued up to really, take that period that you may want to take a week or two off and recharge, but not necessarily want a hiatus from your audience. So that leaves that luxury. I have 100 episodes in queue.
Wow.
That's not by choice. It's by accident. So I mean, it's a good problem to have, but it's a lot of content. So at first, I just started asking around. I'm in like a group or like a beta. It's called for Inc. Magazine, Inc. Solopreneurs. So I went on the boards there and got a few people initially, interviewed my brother. I think he was my first interview when I switched over to an interview format, and then really started capitalizing on Facebook groups. There's like 5 or 6 good ones in terms of finding guests, be a guest. There's a lot of platforms out there like Podmatch, Podbooker, podcastguest.com that, always have guests looking to share their message, especially authors and people releasing something. So I would recommend, if you can't reach someone that may not be attainable in your maybe in your mind, which I don't think
Okay.
is necessarily true, because I think you should really shoot your shot, and you'd be surprised how many people say yes. But
Really? Okay.
if somebody's releasing a book, especially during this whole COVID where they can't do live interviews,
Mhm.
you have a good chance of getting that person on regardless of your audience, because they're trying to basically do a, kind of like a PR media blitz. So like that's one recommendation, and it's just kind of consistency. Book your calendar, whatever you're comfortable, whatever your recording times are. Sometimes maybe you want to be consistent, so maybe you record, like we're recording now at night. Maybe you want to block a few nights, or if you have a weekend, every other weekend, if you have 4 or 5 hours, I mean, maybe if your format is 30 to 45 minutes, you can squeeze in one day, 6 episodes. And if you release, once a week, that's 6 weeks. So I think it's what fits your lifestyle, what you're trying to do with the show, how the show is growing, what other resources you have. Obviously, if you have a team, if you're outsourcing certain things, if you're doing it on your own, I think it's very situational. And I think you can get advice, or like, that's backed by experience, but it's also situational, whatever's the right fit for you.
And so I wanted to kind of like run off with you very quickly, because I know we're limited on time today. But with SEO, when people are saying that, because I hear it thrown around a lot, what exactly does that mean? And how are we able to, podcasters are able to utilize it?
Yeah, so SEO means search engine optimization. It means optimizing or a website, or a property you have some control in, to basically do certain things. There is about 200 to 300 ranking factors that a search engine like Google takes into consideration when you're doing an organic search to show up on the first page, as favorably as possible for a specific term or phrase or topic. So really doing certain things in terms of the content, so on-site, in terms of strengthening the domain authority of your site through other efforts like link building and link acquisition and relationship building, which builds your link profile, and then kind of the technical component of how your site is built, the code itself, the response time, things of that nature. And those 3 things kind of coupled together go into, how you perform. But specifically, let's say ideally, that's related to you having a website, web property that highlights, and maybe you have an embedded player on there. You represent each episode in a blog post as well, so you can embed the transcript. You can write like follow-up information or more takeaways that people will get value out of, that maybe wasn't necessarily covered, but the guest or you want to provide to your audience, and kind of cast a wider net about that general topic. But if it's something like you don't have a website, considering things like your show notes within your podcast host, your audio host,
Okay.
things like titles, doing research on effective. I'm not saying, keyword stuff, but there may be a variation that you want to do that something is more favorable in terms of search volume and has less, competition that can possibly, if you do utilize that title, it'll show up more favorably for, related things in that way. And obviously people looking for a specific subject matter related to that, including having more obviously information in your show notes that get crawled as well for a search engine to better understand what that specific episode or episode page is about, you have a better chance of showing up. So somebody may not necessarily be looking to listen to your podcast in a related search, but if they're doing a search and they see you and it's relevant information, you may, get a new listener or subscriber through that as well.
Should we be paying? Because I know there's a lot of companies out here now that say that if you pay them, they will be able to do all of that for you. Should we be paying them, or is it something that we can really manage to, do ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, search engine optimization is time consuming and tedious, and it's not like a set it and forget it, or you get to a point and you stop. Honestly, there are certain things you could be doing yourself, like, utilizing, there's some free and cost-effective tools in terms of doing topical research or keyword research, or even things related to your show in terms of, the title of your episodes. Like I said, things you're putting in your show notes and things of that nature. But there's a lot of kind of snake oil salesmen that don't necessarily know what SEO is. And I have to kind of several times nicely correct people, like that's not search engine optimization on Clubhouse. So at least if you're going to have somebody do, or outsource it or help you with it, find another person that may be qualified that can help you maybe assess what they're offering. Because I've had a lot of people bring a contract to me and it's like, $5,000. I'm like, you're getting like $300 of value out of what they're, supposed to be charging you. So there's situations like that. And if you don't know what a specific thing is, something can look super enticing. And usually a red flag is when somebody says, I can get you on the first page of Google in like 3 months. If somebody's giving you a specific time frame for a specific term or subject matter or topic, like that's usually like a red flag. So there are things you can be doing. One great thing, if you do have a website, I recommend to clients and companies in terms of value, going on interviews in terms of podcasts. It's a natural way in terms of gaining traction, both obviously a platform for your message in terms of visibility for your brand and PR. And then usually the host will ask you if you have any links. So you can ask for a link back to a specific website. Obviously, if it's on the audio host, it'll get syndicated and you'll have, several. But if they also have a website, a lot of the time you get a do follow link. Do follow means it passes kind of the SEO juice. There's do follow and no follow. No follow is not necessarily bad, but it doesn't necessarily give direct value, but it does give you the opportunity for referral traffic over time as well. So like last year I did 80 interviews and news, different news related things and media publications. So from all of those, I got a boost and as well as cross-pollinating audiences, because if you are a podcaster and you have a message to share, you're really eliminating one barrier that you may have on other platforms in terms of kind of growing your show. So when you go on another show, the listeners are already native listeners. So you don't have to convince them to become a podcast listener. So they can just go over and start listening. Whereas in other platforms, like if you have a good hashtag strategy and you can amplify your content, let's say on social media, you may reach a potential user or fan or somebody that, you think is going to be a subscriber or a long-term listener, but they're not a native, a podcast listener. So you have another thing to do, which is convince them to start listening to podcasts as a whole as well.
So that kind of brings up another point. Videos. Are you for, because I know I hear a lot of podcasters, especially the veterans that have been in the podcast game since the very beginning, that say that, video podcasting, it isn't podcasting, and it's not going to really increase your podcasting numbers. It's just going to increase it on another like avenue or platform. Are videos necessary?
I don't think they're necessary, but they're a nice component. And like you said, like for me, a podcast is something that you can easily get out there and syndicate via our RSS feed. Like with video, there's a lot of people here, I have a podcast on YouTube. Well, you have a vodcast or a video blogger, whatever you want to call it. But if you're not, hosting the audio and you're, pushing it to, let's say, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, it's really not a podcast. It might be a talk show or some kind of other, creative endeavor. But to me, if you're a podcaster, you're doing the audio play and then you're supplementing it with video if you want video. Sometimes video resonates and connects. Obviously, when you have video as well, it's a nice thing for social media because a lot of social media platforms favor, obviously, video content, especially chopped up short form content. So like TikTok or like Instagram Reels. So if you do have that, that's kind of a leg up, because if you put like an audiogram up there, it's not going to perform as well. So that's good. But yeah, like I agree with the notion of, somebody simply being on YouTube isn't necessarily, a podcaster. But, if you do have a podcast and you are on YouTube and you have a great following on YouTube, that's great. You can add that to your overall, obviously, funnel them to maybe a podcast listening platform, or if they prefer to listen and watch. There's only a handful of shows that I really did that with.
Okay.
Like the Joe Rogan Experience, I wouldn't listen to like on Spotify or Apple
Really?
Podcasts. I'll have it on YouTube because sometimes like they do like stupid stuff in the studio and whatnot, and it's interesting, like when I'm working, but I have it playing. And there's another show, the Jocko podcast, which is like a former Navy SEAL that has like a very like motivational type show. Those are really the only two shows that I like listen to per se on YouTube. Everything else is just straight audio consumption.
Okay, so it's not necessary, which is good to know, because it requires a whole nother set of skills in order to actually get into the video space. But the big question that all podcasters have is monetization. When is, because I know on day one we all want it. On day one, we don't have any listeners. Should we be going after sponsors in the beginning, or is this something where you build up an audience, you build up a following, and then you go after the sponsors?
I mean, you don't have to have an audience to start, I would say, monetizing. You can reach out to, if you are in a specific, very niche down category, you can reach out to advertisers directly and avoid kind of the middleman and get a better rate. And you can offer different things outside of like that traditional CPM price. You can offer some kind of like a bulk or group package. So like maybe you have an interview based show, so you'll interview that person or people from their company if you do have a website. So the more you can like entice them with or throw into like the sweeten the pot, the more likely obviously they're going to go for it. If you have a website, website content in terms of feature them on the site, additional blog posts. Obviously, if you're running a pre-roll or a mid-roll ad, having that as well, possibly other marketing efforts like, we'll boost our interview. So like, let's say 10,000 more people see it. So really creating kind of a marketing package, which in 2021, I launched something similar to that. Obviously, interviews are free, but if you want, let's say, to fast track your episode, obviously with 100 interviews in queue, it's going to take a few months. Things like providing a press release, providing the edited video and the release to use it. Because I mean, I've done in studio interviews where in situations like that, if you want the recording, you have to pay for it, and you have to pay. Once you pay, it's understood that you're paying for really the release and the license to use it as you see fit as well. So providing those things. So it depends who you are and what space you are. You can find creative ways to do so. Obviously, you can go kind of like the donation and Patreon route, but you have to build up a like you said, a significant audience, because only like 1, 2, 3%, if you're lucky, convert to, start supporting you via Patreon. Obviously, you can create courses and things of that
I was gonna
nature.
ask you about that because that's a big push now, the ebooks.
Yeah, you can have different product, but obviously knowing your expertise and things of that nature. Tanner, my co-host, has like a lot of courses and trains people in terms of monetizing their shows with things besides ads, which
Okay.
a main highlight is courses. So finding what your expertise is and really obviously adding value in that course. So like high ticket courses, and you don't necessarily need a large audience to obviously be successful in that. So there are creative ways, but obviously it's nice if your audience is growing and you get to a point where you have kind of numbers to back it up. But other than that, I'm not saying obviously lie about your numbers,
Okay.
but you're the only one that knows your numbers. Like nobody can physically find it. I mean, they can do an estimate based on how you're performing, sizes of your,
Really?
yeah. I
Because
mean,
there's all these websites like Chartable, and they're out there, and they're like, we can. Because I was like, I didn't think Apple gave that information out.
they don't, but you see like how episodes, which ones are popular. You see, usually if a show is in the top 200 in its category and doesn't fluctuate too crazy, usually they have a decent following. And a decent base of subscribers. Like you can utilize things like if you do a website, you can do some background information on their website and see how much organic traffic they have to their site. I mean, I have different, I don't know what you want to call them, spy tools or whatever, but I can see like traffic estimates to specific pages. So let's say they have an embedded player on a specific page, and I can deduce as an estimate that they got 300,000 people visit that podcast, that player, that the page that player was on. So I can really deduce then a large portion of that, obviously not necessarily 300,000, but it's probably at least 100,000 or so that went there to listen to it. So I can get an idea or an estimate, and then looking at sizes and engagement of social media communities. So you have to take like probably 10, 11, 12 data points to really paint a picture to as close as possible. But you can know in terms of performance if a show is really performing the way, the host is really saying it is.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know, because I think a lot of the numbers part is big for podcasters. There isn't really a place to get the numbers. There isn't really a place, and you don't want to, like you said, you don't want to lie. So you're creating these numbers and sheets based off of kind of what you have. We have 5 minutes left. So I want to ask you, because here's another big thing that podcasters struggle with. Give us some advice. This is just your opinion of what you believe are the best sites. Because a lot of people, like I use Anchor, a lot of people are using sites like that. What hosting site for newer podcasters should we stay away from? And who would you recommend that we kind of give a try?
I wouldn't necessarily say stay away, but like they're all built to do the same thing, whether they're free or paid.
Okay.
Some of them do a better job doing so. Some of them provide additional features. If they're paid, the way they bill is a little different. So something like Captivate.fm bills on total amount of downloads reached. So it's good possibly for a new podcaster, and they give like a rudimentary website, so you're included. So like each of your episodes, and a post is automatically created associated to that, kind of like a blog post that you can add to it, which is a nice feature. They have a dedicated community, and something like if you don't exceed that amount of downloads, regardless of how many episodes you're launching, because a lot of platforms obviously bill on the bandwidth that you're utilizing.
Spreaker, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot. So if you want one month you release 4 and then you want to release 20, I mean, you got to have to go to the plan up. So with Captivate, I mean, it's nice because you can have 5 shows, and if they don't exceed that number of downloads, you can host those 5 shows there, and nothing really gets affected. And they have a good community, so there's like pros and cons to each. In terms of Real Talk podcasting, we host on Simplecast. So Simplecast is good as well. Obviously, Libsyn is kind of like one of the industry standards. Their interface is a little archaic, but they're launching actually a redesign, so a more modern look and feel. So, I mean, it's just kind of what fits you. And I mean, there's Buzzsprout, there's Libsyn, there's probably like 10 to 15 well-known ones, and they all do what they're designed to do, but like the additional features, the communities, how they bill. Obviously, Anchor, people talk about, the content is your own or not your own, which if you read the terms and conditions, I mean, Spotify owns it. It's not necessarily like you can leave at any time.
Mhm.
Obviously, you set up your redirect if you move. So they don't necessarily own your content, but they can utilize it to like market something else like on Spotify. So it might be in a
Got
playlist or
you.
something like that. But I mean, they don't own it, but since it's free, it's free. So, I mean, I do like the integration, obviously, with Spotify. Like now they released some shows, the top tier shows in terms of performance. They're going to have direct monetization and subscription options through Spotify. Spotify is obviously letting Anchor users sample certain songs within Anchor legally. So there's a lot of features in that sense. Maybe Anchor will release a paid version as well. But I mean, if you're starting with Anchor, you can always move. But it's one of those things, if you don't necessarily want to move, then you may want to do a little bit of research and really find that right fit to begin with.
I definitely agree with that, and I'll have to, I know you're super busy. When you're not busy, we will have to bring you back talking about what copyright, because you guys were talking about that on the when I believe your latest episode about music and what music is safe to use and who's giving you the license, which is a biggie in the podcast world. A lot of people are using things they shouldn't be using, so we'll have to have you back one day for that. But before we go, I want people to be able to get some more information from you. He listened to all of the podcasts that you're a part of and be able to follow you on Clubhouse and on social media.
Yeah, so now we got the privilege to get into the Fireside beta. So there's like 1,000 people on there, and it's pretty interesting. We got them boarded this week as creators. So now we're creating content unique to Fireside. It's a different look and feel. I can't really say much because literally the CEO of the company onboarded us, and it's kind of like they want to be kind of hush hush for the next few months until they roll out completely. But you can actually have the ability through a link, the interviews and content that we host there, people within other platforms or other places can view in, and they don't necessarily have to be on the platform, because Fireside automatically records, that conversation for you, or if you're, just talking solo. So, which is nice. So we're adding and contributing content that way and really testing the platform. Obviously, Clubhouse, we have the Real Talk podcasting club, where we have 3 rooms daily to add value that way. We have realtalkpodcasting.com. If you go there, obviously, like you said, there's a lot of other additional materials that can help you make decisions, get advice, things of that nature. You can find the podcast there, and obviously other podcast players. And my other interview-based show is called the Digital Savage Experience podcast, which, can be found on almost every podcast player as well.
Yes, and if you want to get on there, he is back. It's like Nobu and to get food